Hello and welcome back to another EDH deck tech video. Today I'm going to be showing my most recent Jeleva list. Well, I need to start by saying this is not a legal deck in any way. This is a fun deck. This is an deck. With the recent announcement of the third set as an Unglued and Unhinged, I am super excited, and I have been given consent by my play group to add Unhinged and Unglued cards to a deck. This deck is the deck I chose to do it with because it's hard to keep up with 1.5 life point changes, and Jeleva is just naturally good at throwing spells around. So, in this deck I have about 20 Unglued and Unhinged and Holidays type cards. Let me run through Jeleva real quick and I will get through the deck. Jeleva, if you haven't seen any of my other videos, is a 4-drop, 1/3 flying vampire wizard legend. She costs 1 in a Grixis. Her ability is, whenever she enters the battlefield, I exile top X cards off of everyone's deck, including myself, where X is equal to her mana cost. And then when she is declared as an attacker, I can cast 1 free instant or sorcery from that specific exile pile. So, if I cast her for 4, I get 4 cards off everyone. If I cast her for 10, I get 10 cards off everyone's deck. If she is flickered, of course, I lose the card. She would re-enter the battlefield with 0 being the mana cost spent on her. And exile piles are gone from that previous set. She can also be spam cast and exiled, sacked for mana and whatnot to be an exile general. She is very good at giving your deck the color of Grixis if you just want to do some kind of storm-based deck. If you're looking for a competitive Jeleva deck, look for Mox Nix. Whatever pronounced. His list is good for Storm. He's essentially using Jeleva just for a chance to get a wheel in generic value. But for me, I love Jeleva. I like using her for big free spells. Let's cast a free time stretch. That's what I like Jeleva doing. If you would like to see a better, what the Jeleva list is actually like an actual giant spell deck, go look for the one on my channel called Glass Cannon. That is kind of your typical Jeleva list. So let's look through the list. This is again another 0 creature deck. It's all spells and permanents. So let's start with the actual tutorage here. There's not a lot. Again, I wanted a more casual, funny deck. So there's no demonic tutors in the deck. We have 1 mystical tutor to help set up a draw. I don't even know if there's time warps. Yeah, there's no time warps in the deck anymore. So there's no miracle time warp. This is here just to get what I need. I can also use this before I cast Jeleva, to put something specific under Jeleva. Same thing for long-term plans. This is here specifically so I can get 1 spell set up for Jeleva. I can do this at the end of an opponent's turn and draw and not screw up my tutorage. The only other tutor in the deck is Behold the Beyond, because this is, I don't know. This is a terrible card. I was actually tempted to see how many mythic rares I could shove in this deck, and this is just god awful. So I can discard my entire hand and tutor for 3 cards. This deck does not have a lot of win conditions. This deck is more themed around just screwing with the opponents and having for a chaotic game. And I guess, yeah, there's a Mystic's Mastery in the deck, but past that, this is here just to really make the opponents question my sanity, I guess? I don't know. We have the interactive draw spells. Fortune's Favor, Steam Augury, and Factor Fiction. Ways for us to interact with the opponents and have a fun game because they can help me choose their fate. I say that like this deck is strong. This is an interesting and fun deck. This is not very competitive, but these are just fun cards. We have Jace's Ingenuity for a generic draw 3. Again, a free spell off Jeleva. You might as well just draw some cards. It's an instant, so you can also hold it up. Recurring Insight is a much better card. You can usually draw a lot of cards. Rebound does not work if you cast it off Jeleva, because Rebound only works if you cast from hand. So you just, yeah, still a good draw. We have 3 bits of control. The problem with Jeleva, you cannot cast specific spells off of her, like a counter spell or a reverberate. Things like that don't work. But unsubstantiate, you can still cast off Jeleva as a bounce spell. So this is the kind of control that a Jeleva deck can run. For example, Cryptic Command. You can use all the other modes except for Counterspell off of Jeleva. Otherwise, you can just hold on to it. Another inclusion that could be in here is Brutal Expulsion. It's a 4-drop, 2 blue and a red instant. Bounces a spell to an opponent's hand or does 2 damage to a creature in exile. Essentially, it's a veritable type of permission that you could run in Jeleva. The better one here being Mystic Confluence. It's a 5-drop, so it's literally a strictly better Jace's Ingenuity, but you could also use it to draw or bounce some things. 3 bits of permission, that's all this deck gets. What the deck really wants to do, although, is just dick around with the opponent's stuff. That's really the only way the deck can win. So we have ways of casting their spells from their graveyard, an instant speed Wrath of God, for example. We have a way of copying things. You can cast Kicker off of Jeleva. So if this is under Jeleva, I can pay the 5 at the time, and I can get the Kicker. You can also do buyback. Capsize is a common thing you could see in Jeleva decks, because you can buy back Capsize from the exile zone right off the stack into your hand, because when these spells are being cast, they would end up in your graveyard, for example. We have Worst Fears. I am taking one opponent's turn. This card's not that good. I mean, this is only in here just because it's funny and I'm dicking around with the opponents. This is kind of the idea of the deck, really. We have a Bribery, so I can actually get a good win condition. We have Stolen Identity. You can cipher things on Jeleva, and that's actually pretty good. Especially the black one, the Undercity Plague, I believe it's called. It's a 6-drop black one. It's essentially a one-sided smallpox. So you can cast this off of Jeleva, and if there's no blockers, you can cipher it onto Jeleva and get a second cast when she connects. Pretty good. This also can get you mana rocks if you need like a Gale Lotus copy. And we have Knowledge Exploitation for the opponent's spells. Blatant Thievery being probably the best spell in the deck, because if you get this out early off of Jeleva and start taking opponents' lands, you will very quickly be able to hard cast the spells instead of having to rely on your commander. Then we have a Spell Twine for a little bit of recursion, again taking the opponent's stuff and usually more importantly my stuff. While talking about recursion, let's go to the wipes, because there is a Volcanic Vision. This was tested in my actually good Jeleva list. It wasn't good enough, but in this one it's kind of funny because it helps me recur a spell. Then we have just the basic board wipes. The deck does need to survive. We have no creatures to defend with, so we have lots of wipes. We have Toxic Deluge, a Damnation, and a Necromantic Selection, so I can reanimate something relevant. Drawing some cards from one opponent, and drawing cards from all the opponents, including myself. Blasphemous Axe is just catch-all. It's one of the reasons to run red, and All is Dust for those pesky enchantments and planeswalkers. We do have one bounce spell here in Cyclonic Rift. There was things like a Devastation Tide and whatnot. There's too many mana rocks in this deck to run Devastation Tide, but while this cannot be overloaded off Jeleva, it's still powerful enough to run. And then let's go through the actual win cons, like how this deck itself can win if I can't interact with the opponents. Mizzix Mastery, it's not a storm deck, but this is going to rebuy me enough spells, typically when overloaded, that it just creates a game-winning scenario. We have Hatred, which is fantastic off Jeleva. Again, no one really wants to block the 1/3, and they're not going to see this coming if it's in your hand. In my actual good list, if I ever see a tutor under Jeleva, and I am allowed to attack with her and get the tutor off and no one blocks, I will almost always get Hatred, depending on the number of opponents, really. This is actually very relevant now with Atraxa out. Most people running Atraxa are plugging this in there so they can just remove one opponent from the game. We have Army of the Damned, because a pile of 2/2 zombies, if they aren't dealt with, can just win you the game. And Curse of the Cabal for hating out one specific opponent. Now, those are the legal cards in the deck, the spells that you are actually supposed to run. Let's go through the cards, the cards that are not actually legal for EDH. We'll start with the worst card here, actually. There is a few series of cards in the unblocks. For example, there's a bunch of gotcha cards in the second one. Number Crunch is essentially it's a permanent bounce. I can target any permanent, including lands, but it has this effect that says gotcha. Gotcha means that if this card is in my graveyard and something happens, the effect happens, I can say gotcha and return the card from my graveyard to my hand. Some of those are broken. This one is actually probably the most obnoxious one in this deck. It is not the most broken one. For example, there's a gotcha counter spell. I am not running that. This one, although, is super easy to get people to say numbers. All I have to do is ask, like, especially when the night gets longer, ask someone what's the damage coming my way, their life total, how many cards in their hand, how much mana was that, and all of a sudden I can just keep bouncing this back to my hand. And yeah, this is the annoying one, and I'm straight saying this because this is the one that makes people want to actually hate you out of the game, because if they can't exile this, it just rebuys too frequently. But we have an instant speed for damage, and it just the gotcha is say deal or damage. The stop that. This is another one you do have to be careful with. If your group is allowing you to play these cards in multiplayer, do not buddy up with one opponent to discard the other opponent's hands. Because audibly hearing someone flicker their cards, yeah, sure, you can just spend all your black mana to dump one opponent's hands. And then your friends all of a sudden won't let you play this card anymore or this deck anymore. The trick when it comes to including illegal and casual cards into your deck, you're at the mercy of your opponents. If they decide that they're done with you playing those cards, you have to take them out. I mean, the only reason I'm allowed to play these is because my group says I can. So, just stressing this enough, do not pair up with one opponent to target hate one other opponent out with this card. Touch and Go destroys a land. Sadly, this is a sorcery for 4 mana, Stone Rain, but the gotcha is if anyone is touching their face, which typically happens when they facepalm. Kill Destroy. It just is essentially a Doom Blade, where the gotcha is kill and destroy. Then we have some other stuff here. We have Strategy Schmategy. This has a lot of effects. We have a chance for a Wheel of Fortune. We have a chance for essentially an Armageddon. The chaos on this one is sometimes dangerous, but I mean, that is the point of the deck. We have a Double Take and a Double Cross. This is another one of the series of cards from the original block, the Double series. The red one is pretty bad. What these do, essentially they have an effect immediately, and they have an effect on the next game with the opponent. This one just says draw 2 cards. How my table has allowed me to rule this is I have to be playing this deck to get the effect. Otherwise, it's not fair. So this one is I draw 2 cards and with one opponent. I draw 2 cards, and as long as the opponent I choose with this card's resolution is in the next game I play this deck, on turn 0 I draw 2 more cards. The worst one here is the one that removes any card from one opponent's hand, like a discard. I can't hit basics, but this does mean on turn 0 I can get rid of like a Soul Ring or a non-basic land. This one's annoying. Goblin Sleigh Ride. This one is also very bad. This is essentially like a 3 damage to all creatures that I can scoot Jeleva on. Essentially, this is literally Jeleva's in play. I cast this. I start scooting Jeleva around for 3 damage. This one is more entertaining. It's not good. The one that probably shouldn't be is Season's Beatings, because I don't have a lot of red mana in this deck. But if this resolves, it just screws around with one opponent who happens to have creatures. We have Booster Tutor. Again, this is a situational card. The issue with this card is it adds time to your turn. Jeleva decks already are susceptible to taking longer than normal turns, especially if you're playing Time Warps. But this specific card can easily add a minute plus to your turn, and that can irritate opponents. Before you actually think of how annoying that is, do realize this is not actually a broken card. Yes, a booster pack could be giving you access to one of 15 cards, but think of the actual power of your average booster pack. It's garbage. 14 piece of shit cards and some maybe janky rare. The best we're going to get here is a landfall or a bad removal spell. We have Rare Begone. This is a card that probably should not be in the deck. This is a dangerous card for us because we will be discarding our entire hand. The reason this is scary and maybe not fair to the opponents is it hits lands. Think of how many shock lands or rare lands are in play in your average EDH game, and this will destroy them all. My deck has, I think, 1 rare land, and I'm doing the mass basic run where I have 30 basics in the deck again, because I love proving to my opponents that you can run a 3-color deck with like a $2 mana base. So this is essentially maybe a one-sided Armageddon. It's situational. And we have Gifts Given. Obviously, Gifts Ungiven is banned in this format for some reason. Intuition isn't. I don't know why. But Gifts Given is a backwards Gifts Ungiven, where I am taking the card from an opponent's deck. Again, this is something you have to be careful with. You don't want to just get the biggest, scariest, I win the game threats and combos. Sometimes you want to buddy up and give someone something fun in their graveyard. You have to be careful not to make these cards game-breaking. Otherwise, again, your friends just won't let you play them. Let's go on to some non-land permanents. We have just a handful here. We have some Boots to give Jeleva haste. Again, not nearly as scary giving her haste in this deck as it is in a deck that's running like Time Stretch and Expropriate. We have Ashnod's Altar to sack Jeleva to rebuy her. We have a Helm of Possession to sack Jeleva and take a better creature. We have a Nicobolus, God Pharaoh, because I opened this and I just wanted to find a place for it. He does a theme of playing the opponent's spells, hence he's in the deck. We have Fervor for a little bit of haste, and we have yet another Aether Vortex. This is a confusing card. In short, it gives all creatures haste, including Jeleva. And everyone plays with the top card of their deck revealed. If there's a creature or land, essentially a permanent, you can pretend it's in play. For example, if the top card of your deck is a land, you can tap it for mana. If the top card of your deck is a creature, you can attack with it because it has haste. You can block with it. You're essentially tapping the card on the top of your deck if you do that. It's complicated and confusing. Funny card. Let's go through the ramp. There is a Jack in the Mox. This is again an illegal card, not just because it's unhinged and unglued, but because it taps for red and green or white. I mean, my excuse here is this was going to be a mana crypt. What's more broken, a mana crypt or Jack in the Mox? That's really the reason this is still in the deck. And this has already lava axed me twice. So fun card is fun. We have a Jack in the Mox. We have a Chrome Mox. We have a Soul Ring. We have my Wayfarer's Bauble. Then we have the generic 2-drops and 3 signets and 3 diamonds, my favorites. That usually does help get Jeleva out on turn 3. 2 more options you could add would be like talismans if you want to do that. Let's go through the lands to wrap up the deck. We have 2 last lands. R&D's Secret Lair is just not actually good. So there's potential here. Usually you just explain the funny to your opponents and then everything is forgotten because it doesn't do anything. It says you can play cards as written and ignore all errata. So yeah, if you do Zombie Apocalypse, which says destroy all humans, you can joke with your friends to please don't kill you because you're human. Haha. More realistically, if you see like an old mystical tutor that says you can go tutor for a mana source, you can use that with this land out to go get a non-base, like a mana rock or a land or something like that. But this is typically forgotten. It taps for colorless, so it's not good. City Vassal, though, does give us all the colors we need. This is the only color-producing non-basic land in the entire deck. And has a butt crack, so it's infinitely better. We have the super budget fetches, and these guys here, Terramorphic Evolving, Grixis Panorama, and the 2 come to play tap ones. And then just a bunch of basics because the deck can function with them. We have 12 swamps. These are all the original Ravnica DCI lands from John Avon. We have 12 islands and I think 6 mountains. I love this mountain. A bunch of basics because I love proving again that you can play 3+ or a 2 to 3 color deck with like literally a super hyper budget mana base and it still works. So, that is my Jeleva deck, Unglued, Unhinged. I am very excited for the Unset coming up, and I hope to maintain this deck by then, and hopefully my opponents haven't gotten tired of it to the point where they don't want to face it anymore. This is, of course, a deck where I have to carry a booster pack around with me just in case I see Booster Tutor. But it's a super fun deck. The issue, again, is it's not just playing uncards. The theme of the deck is to dick around. So this is a hyper casual, annoying sometimes deck. And I mean, I enjoy this deck. So if you have any opinion or ideas or feedback, let me know. Always welcome.